I want your stories. I want your songs. And you're going to have mine. So, for this lecture, we're going to talk about sinners, and we're also going to talk about Cowboy Carter. And if you are not necessarily a Beyonce fan or what have you, that ain't got nothing to do with me. There's still a message in the music. Okay, great, let's get started. So, I want to start off talking about that particular line because for me, my brain immediately went to race records. And throughout this conversation, I am going to be looking up because I do have some references on my screen. But it's important for us to understand that from the time that African Americans were stolen and brought to this country, there was always a pushing and a pulling in terms of no, you can't bring your African spiritual practices. No, you can't wear your hair the way it grows out of your head. No, you are only here to breed or to work. You are seen as property. You cannot have music. You cannot have the instruments. And of course, what did those people do? They ended up using their bodies as a way to produce music, which when we think about a lot of the current dance trends that we have, or when you think of stepping and all of the various ways that we use our bodies to create music, that comes to mind. So even in this particular movie, when Remick says that, it's 1932 where this film is set, but you have Bill Brunzi, I believe, that went to Chicago in 1926. That I think he was a janitor at the time, and then he got in front of some music executives, ended up recording music, and then his music was sold as a race record so that it could be played for a black audience, and then you could have other white artists that would end up covering those same songs, but their music would be a lot more popular depending on the particular genre. And in those instances, it was, construed as something else. You have all of these artists, I want to say between 1920 and 1940, that were producing these amazing bodies of work, but they were not getting paid for it. And even when that same artist was presented to a white audience, they knew nothing about them. And when you think about the Jim Crow era of that time, it's really important to be able to link little nuggets like this that we hear in the movie to what is actually happening current state. So as an example of people, I want you to think about Ma Rainey, Duke Ellington, what's his name, Jelly Roll Morton. All of those artists, on top of more, literally produce hit after hit after hit, little to no recognition. And the reason why I also bring in Beyonce, specifically the Cowboy Carter album, is because there is so much history that is in that particular album, especially as it relates to country music. But I went to the concert and I could not stop thinking about the imagery in the show. And I think it's a reclamation of our history, of our music, of the talents of the people that have come before us. And I think that's really important for us to consider and remember. And irrespective of how people might feel about her, there is a message in the music all the time, especially when you think about just segregation and how the gifts and the talents of my ancestors, of my grandparents, aunts, and uncles were taken from them. They weren't provided the opportunity to be able to move up or move along or do a lot of things. And we need to reckon with that history. No one can blame you for what people behind you did or what have you. I'm not saying that at all. But I think we need to be able to look at the historical facts and documentation related to a lot of these things. And I believe there's also a creator on here. I think her name is Ashley. I'm going to try to find her videos. But I think she also did a phenomenal video about race records. And you should just go follow her in general. But the whitewashing of black music, of black culture is pervasive. And we all know that. And if people really took the time to understand that history and that background and why it's so upsetting, I think we would be able to have actual conversations about just why a lot of this stuff is and how we can actually reconcile by addressing that clean versus dirty paint that I talked about in one of my earlier sessions. And even when we think about gospel music, that's another thing that is very important for us to think about. And even when Delta Slim is replaying the scene about his friend that was murdered, he was talking about how they were playing the blues in different places with a white audience. And he said something along the lines of white folks like the blues, but they don't like the people that make it. And it made me think back to the second verse in American Requiem by Beyonce, where she says, the grandbaby of a moonshine man, Gaston, Alabama, got folk down in Galveston, rooted in Louisiana, used to say I spoke to country, and the rejection came, said I wasn't country enough, said I wouldn't saddle up. But if that ain't country, tell me what is. Plant my bare feet on solid ground for years. They don't know how hard I had to fight for this when I sang my song. Now, let's go back to sinners and think about when we meet Sammy and his family, and they're sharecroppers. And many people who used to pick cotton would literally be planted in the ground in their bare feet, connected to the earth, connected to the song, to the rhythm, connected with each other, connected to the earth. So my question to you to ponder is, how can we be supportive in the reclamation of what it means to be Black in America in a time where so many Black and brown people especially are being discriminated against? And remember, I just want you to think about the Civil Rights Act of, what was it, 1964? I'm just gonna bring this up here. It is a landmark civil rights act, landmark civil rights and labor law of the U.S. that outlaws discrimination. My accent just came out. It outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, and later sexual orientation and gender identity. The act required equal access to public places and employment and enforced desegregation of schools and the right to vote. Now, remind you, my mother was born in 1959. She didn't have these same rights. My grandmother did not have these rights. My father was born in 49. I want you to think about this also. My brother and I, and many, many millennials, are the first generation that was really and truly born free with all of these rights. Think about that.